The first like 30 seconds of live are always the worst. It's so strange when no one's here. Okay, as soon as Greg hops on, we will do this. There he is. What's up, man?
Greg is a key.
How's life?
Absolutely terrible because I'm doing notes right now.
Oh, it sucks. Well, you know what's better than not doing notes?
The other thing is that I apparently screwed up something on the address portion for Rogue Fitness. So because I forgot to put what unit numbers my place is,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to get delivered today. It gets delivered tomorrow. So I have to wait another day for this stupid Echo bike, but whatever.
Oh, I mean, it's pretty much the world is over because you can't do cardio.
I mean, I haven't done it in God knows how long, so I mean, I'm gonna shed another single tear, just in case.
Just
Oh dear, dude,
Jeff's being a naughty boy right now. So
is
anyways,
he?
Greg,
Oh yeah,
you are a physical therapist, yes?
yes, that's the word on the street. Yeah.
Okay. I used to be one. I haven't been one since COVID started, but I
Oh
think I still
damn.
have the degree. And then we actually met each other through Strongman.
Yeah, it was. We met at Brian's place, Never Say.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, you're a PT. Oh, that's awesome.
And then we ended up taking a course together. We were out at we met randomly
Yeah,
because of the
Graston and
Grafton course
in like
Florida.
Podunk, Deal, Maryland.
Yeah, that was it. That was an interesting spot. It was middle of nowhere, very tiny town.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
mean, I thought the Eastern Shore was the middle of nowhere. That's even more of the middle of nowhere.
yeah. But then I'd say through since that through random strongman competitions, just competing, not against each other because I'm like
Hmm.
100 pounds heavier than you, but and like a foot shorter. Um, but I don't know, like through Instagram interactions and stuff like that, I would say that we've definitely had some pretty meaningful conversations when it comes to like
Yeah.
depression and
Hmm.
anxiety and kind of
Oh,
managing
yeah.
that space. And I know that you post quite a bit about your experiences, like on lives.
Yeah.
Not on. This is actually your first live, but on your story,
Yeah.
you share
Yeah,
a
on the
lot of
story.
stuff. And I think we've had these conversations before, where, especially in like this strength sports world, and especially amongst men, depression and anxiety, I feel like are just not really talked about as much.
No. So, like, I don't know. So, my parents emigrated. I'm first generation born here in the States. My parents emigrated from the Philippines in like the late 70s. So, my dad is that old school, like, Asian dad who doesn't really show any emotion whatsoever unless he's angry. So pretty much like that sort of thing. Being him as my first male role model, it was the old like I can't remember a time that my dad ever told me that he loved me, but I always knew that he did. But it was kind of like this weird, how do you kind of open up to someone who has never opened up at all? So I think that's kind of how it all got started with me. I'm sure that a lot of guys have had similar stories or whatever the case may be, where guys just aren't supposed to talk about how they feel. And the whole like be a man thing, God, if that actually worked, I would have been cured years ago. Oh my God. So, like, historically, the stigma is, at least in my interpretation, is that us guys, we're supposed to shoulder everything. We have to shoulder the world and do it with the most stoic way possible. And it's just kind of tough. It's a lot. And the more that you shoulder, the more I think isolated, at least I feel,
Mhm.
from other people, because you kind of like bottle it up and you just don't know what to do with it. And it's just there and kind of eats away at you. So Pretty much, it's like I'm 30. I'll be 37 in December, and it's kind of like I'm comfortable enough where I just don't care anymore. Like I'll talk about it. I'm sure a lot of guys have had a lot of issues like this before, and they've DM'd me as well, kind of thanking me for opening up because it's tough for them too. So just to let people know that they're not alone in this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is definitely obviously different than yours.
Yeah,
I mean, I grew up just with my dad. My mom died when I was little, and so I watched him kind of spiral down through a lot of mental health stuff. So like, I
mm,
watched him deal with depression. I watched him deal with PTSD. Watched him deal with bipolar disorder. Eventually, like getting diagnosed with like paranoid schizophrenia, and he's been undiagnosed with or he's been diagnosed, but he's been unmedicated for shit. He went off when I was in high school. And so
mm,
that's been like a huge stressor in my life as well as like a whole bunch of other stuff. And so I've like always since high school I've kind of dealt with a lot of like depression and anxiety. But more so from just being in like a really shitty family situation and having like a lot of like pressures to survive to some extent.
yeah,
And that for me like really manifested this past October because last year I had to take over like my grandma's whole
yeah. I
life.
remember. Yeah.
So like she had a subdural hematoma. She was in the hospital for a month. They got back. Her husband left her. We didn't know where he was. He basically just abandoned her, and she was home alone. And I didn't find out for like 2 weeks. And so I had to go down there, start taking care of all this stuff, man, like figure out what her financial situation, what her living situation was going to be, because they were getting divorced, and she had no idea. And then one thing led to another, and she started having more and more dementia. She was in multiple car accidents, and the thing that really set it off for me was I was in Canada presenting at a conference, and I got a phone call from her assisted living place that she had driven her car like through a fence and had almost died.
Mm.
And so like that was just so much stuff on top of my like I felt like the whole world was on my shoulders. And it was getting to the point where like I wasn't I was trying to manage everything by myself, but it was getting to the point where even just writing a fucking email would take me like 3 hours. So I'd sit there and work, like after work, I'd put on a happy face, go treat a patient, and then sit in the office and literally just be so fucking stressed out that I couldn't do anything. I'd just be sitting in front of the computer and I couldn't, like, I would write like the start of an email or note and then just couldn't function.
Yeah. I mean, like, being an introverted guy, like outside of these four walls, like of my clinic, like I have to be like talkative and I have to be extroverted. And in a gym, similar kind of thing where I feel comfortable. But like having to put on that face, put on that mask, and you got all this stuff on the inside, man, it's tiring. Like you put on that smile and you're forcing yourself to talk to patients when half the time I don't feel like talking, but you want to make sure that you build a rapport with the patients and then they feel comfortable and everything. At the end of the day, if I'm not physically exhausted, I'm mentally exhausted. Compounded with that, with the stresses of life for you with your grandmother, or for me with, whatever, like if Noah's broken something at home or whatever, I get a text. It's just like, oh God, not again. So, like, coping mechanisms have been, like I've developed some for myself over the years. Like for me, because growing up, if there was a lot of pressure, I think, on my brother and I, when we were growing up, we got like the Asian child talk repeatedly. And that the Asian child talk is you get three things repeated to you over and over again. And if you don't know what those three things are, it's doctor, lawyer, or engineer. So like there's a lot of pressure. So I remember like if I even got like a C on my report card, like I would get grounded for a quarter. Like that's how bad it was. And then if I forgot my homework at school, like I get spanked. And I mean like bad. So it's just like you have these parents that a lot's riding on it. You realize that they're sacrificing a lot. So you're always in kind of like this fear of telling them that something else is wrong. So it's just like, geez, what do I do with this? So it all came to a head for me. I know that I've talked about it a little bit. God, 4 or 5 years. Like I had a bad experience my freshman year of college, where I had a failed suicide attempt, and it was bad. And then from there, like, ugh, a lot of things had to change. So they used to be very up and down, very, we'll say fiery, to lack of a better term, to working on being as monotone as possible. So that's where my books on tape voices come from. So it's fantastic. But it's just like, how do you, like, being a guy, and especially in strength sports, there is this kind of mystique of, we'll just say, lack of a better term, Razor Ramon machismo, where it's like big and strong on the outside must mean big and strong on the inside. And I've found that that is rarely the case with a lot of my other contemporaries. Um, it's tough. Like, I would say I actually have some of the lower end mental fortitude that I've had to supplant with physical strength just as a support. It's a coping mechanism for me. If I can't be big and strong on the inside, I might as well be big and strong on the outside. And then that has actually probably compounded the issue even more. So going to other guys and talking about it, I think the hardest part is, where do you even begin? Like, that's the hard part for me. It's like, if I got to a point where I needed to open up to, like, you or my brother or best friend, like, I think starting the conversation is the hardest thing. And usually a lot of guys don't know how, and then something terrible happens. Like for me, a failed suicide attempt when I was 17. So it's like, usually it gets to that point when it really shouldn't, because we're so ashamed of the stigma, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like how would you start that conversation with, like, another guy friend?
It's weird, man. It is a very weird space to navigate. I think it's become easier because I've talked about this and tried to be as talkative as possible through like my whole
Mm-hmm.
life. And part of that was because when I was little, I used to bottle everything up inside, and then I would just explode. And it was bad.
That
I
was
was like a 12, 13-year-old kid, but just wasn't good. And
mm,
so because my dad, like, going through his mental health stuff, and then he was going through a divorce from his second wife at the time. That kind of compounded a lot of the stuff and manifested it for him. And
mm,
so he started putting me in therapy. He wanted me to talk to somebody because he's like, oh, this divorce is going to be, bit like rough on him. He's going to need to talk to somebody. It ended up turning into him using the counselor more than me. And then it
mm,
became this like larger thing. But I talked to so many people for so long and tried to use support groups to help manage stuff and like frustrations with my dad's health. Because
yeah,
growing up as a kid with a parent that has like parent schizophrenia, there's like no support groups for you, right? There's support
yeah,
groups for parents that have children with schizophrenia, but there wasn't anything that could help like a 13, 14-year-old kid.
yeah.
And so like my openness to talk about that stuff came from that. And so like
Mm,
I ended up like involuntarily admitting my dad to a psychiatric facility, called the cops. We had this big like family thing. It was a whole to do. And then ended up having to represent myself when I was 17 and my family against him in court, trying to plead for him to get some sort of help mentally.
mm,
Didn't happen. Lost the court case because I was a fucking 17-year-old kid and I had no idea how the legal system worked. And
yeah.
I mean, like, the magistrate was cool, but it was like, that was a horrible moment for me in my life. And it literally like upended everything for me my senior year of high school. I ended up living with like different coaches and friends, eventually moving kind of like in secret with my grandparents, and like lived off a pull-out couch in their basement while I tried to finish high school. And like I had such bad anxiety just hearing my dad's voice or seeing my dad, that I would just like start crying. I remember at a wrestling meet, we were somewhere up in Maryland, um, and I had told like the school and like my coaches that like he wasn't allowed to come pick me up. He wasn't allowed to come into the sporting events because we were having this really unfavorable family situation. And I remember like I had just wrestled a match and I got up and I looked over and I saw him in the hallway at this gym in Maryland, and I like just fucking like lost it. And my
Mm.
coach had to go tell him to leave and like all this other stuff. And so like that, but dealing with that stuff, that's what led me to like be like open with it. So I feel like for me, it's become one of my coping things is just to be like incredibly brutally honest with stuff. And so I use
Yeah.
Instagram because my dad doesn't have an Instagram and doesn't see the shit that I post as a way to like, manage that. And so I feel like I'm on the end of it where on a space like this platform, I feel very comfortable like expressing myself.
Mm.
But then in real life, when I'm actually talking with someone face to face, I find that it's incredibly more challenging. And the only
Yeah.
people that I'm able to open up with are those that I know have dealt with
Similar issues.
similar issues. Because the
Yeah.
thing for me is I feel isolated because I'm 28 and I feel like none of my peer group has any sort of experience with the stuff that I grew up with. Like, not a
Mm.
lot of my friends know what it's like to grow up in a single parent home. Not a lot of them know what it's like to have to deal with and like support a parent or family member who has like severe mental illness. Not a lot of people know what it's like to have to manage your grandparents' like financial situation and life and medical stuff. I feel like in a lot of situations, I'm like fucking 50, 60 years old taking care of somebody, like all these people. But like, I'm living paycheck to paycheck because I'm fucking 2 years out of grad school and I don't know what the hell I'm doing with my own life. And so for
Yeah.
me, like, that stuff's what builds up and makes it so that I'm depressed and anxious and like can't function.
Yeah. For me, yeah, I am what, 7 years out of grad school now. Student loans are super awesome. So got the student loans, got a mortgage, got a car payment, truck payment, got two kids, all this stuff. So it's like I should be in a position where I'm paying more than just the minimum on my student loans, and I can't because family and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So from a money standpoint, from a where's healthcare going standpoint, from a my child 3 months ago told me he was getting bullied at school, so I went to this school and took a look at some of these kids kind of standpoint. So it's a lot. And I feel like if you don't empty the bucket of emotions periodically, it just overflows and something bad typically happens.
Oh yeah.
You have a negative outcome of some sort. So it's just like, how does one kind of mitigate that? How do you empty the bucket periodically rather than it kind of like overflow and something terrible happens? that's that's the for me the $64,000 question. It's a mixture of time management and coping mechanisms that work to keep me functioning in society, because it's just ugh.
And that's the hard part is that's so individual, right? Like and that's what I fucking like hate about social media and people, I guess with their blanket recommendations of like, oh, just put on a smile. Or like they look at you, they're like, oh, you're not depressed, you're so happy. Look at all this stuff that you do. And it's like,
So that's like someone that says, "Oh, you have pain going down the leg. Do this piriformis stretch," and they have no context of where the pain's actually coming from. So
exactly.
it's like, yeah, just smile. Let's do this.
It's like
Ugh.
just because you struggle with some sort of like mental illness or depression, anxiety, whatever it is, doesn't mean that you can't function in life. And that, like, honestly, that's the hard part, right? For me, it's not when I'm out in public and doing stuff, it's when I'm home by myself, you know?
Yeah, and you're alone with your thoughts.
Because it ends up becoming this like vicious cycle of I'm anxious because I need to do something, but then I
Hmm.
can't do the thing that I need to do because I'm so fucking anxious. And then I feel guilty about not doing the thing that I should be doing. And then it makes me feel like I'm worthless and my self-value tanks and like all this other stuff. Or I'm like dealing with that. And then it's like, well, I should be doing something to take care of my own mental health. Like I should take a break. Let me watch TV. But then it's like I can't watch TV because all this other stuff, it makes me feel guilty about doing something that's not the thing that I should be doing in the first place. And it just becomes this like horrible cycle.
Somehow makes me think about me not wanting to do my notes.
Dude, notes is like the perfect example. And that's
Yes.
the thing. It spirals so hard for me sometimes because it's like you have this buildup of work that you know you need to do, but it's like so tedious sometimes and frustrating and you just don't want to do it.
Mhm.
when it seems like that responsibility pales in comparison to all these other things going on in your life.
Yeah, it just gets kind of like kick, the can gets kicked a little further down the street before you actually have to deal with it. Yeah. And then for me, I know that I've used Strongman. I used strength training kind of as like a buffer. Um, Previous to Strongman, I did 2 years of Muay Thai. That was great. Previous to that, I just wanted to not be so fat. But then getting into Strongman um, kind of was the next thing, because when I moved out here to the Eastern Shore, there weren't any places to train Muay Thai. So I found my way into Strongman. Go figure, from watching an episode of Barbecue Pitmasters. Great show. Great show, by the way. I'll have to tell you the story sometime, how Barbecue Pitmasters turned me into a Strongman. But, and that's been working out really great. But then, like, for me, going on to, like, that vicious cycle, being 36, and you'll feel this too in 8 years, Jake. It's the training, injury, competition, injury cycle. So for me, what really kind of gets me down, specifically in terms of like physical therapy, strength training, and all that, is you learn how to peak for something, and then either in the middle of training, close to the peak, or close to when you have to compete, or during the competition itself, you hurt yourself, and then you have this injury happen or something, and then you have to rehab it, and you have to, like, you take that couple steps back and then claw back. It's harder to do when you get a little bit older like me, but as a physical therapist, I'm also the worst kind of patient. I know what I need to do,
100%.
I just do it. So you get into this whole, like, for example, the tediousness of, like, I know I need to do some corrective exercise. I know for a fact that there are at least 5 that I need to do. I don't feel like doing them. So it's like, well, maybe I can do something else. Maybe I'll just warm up with a bar or something like that. But like with this knee of mine. But anyways, yeah, it's like for me anyway, traditional guy move here, like, I identify with what I do quite a bit. So, like, I'm a guy. I'm also a physical therapist. I also compete in Strongman. And then you identify with that so hard, because part of who we are is what we do, I guess, to a certain degree. And when one of those things is threatened, whether it be from injury or whatever the case may be, like how I felt having to withdraw from Maryland's Strongest Man due to a knee injury, like that hurt. That hurt a lot. Not just literally, it hurt figuratively. It's like that's the first time I've ever had to withdraw from anything due to injury, because I couldn't even go with an unweighted yoke, like just picking it, going, knee immediately. So I felt kind of ashamed. I stopped training because I was so depressed because I was hurt. So I wouldn't know what to do. Do I give it 2 weeks? Like I saw your latest post, 2 weeks. I mean, and it's just like, and then the further you don't train, the weaker you are, the worse it gets. So that can be a slippery slope as well, where we use training kind of as a sanctuary and as a stress relief and a means to empty our bucket. When that's taken away from you, oh God, it makes things even worse. So I think that's why I'm just now starting to get into, of all things, barbecuing, because I needed something else to do, just to identify with.
Dude, and then, like, you take a situation like this right now where, I mean, like, I haven't really left my home, like, at all for the past 3 months because I have a heart condition. And so, like where am I going to go? The virus, the invisible enemy, is everywhere,
Yeah.
And so it's just, like, it's frustrating because, like, if you struggle with depression and anxiety, and then you throw, like, 2 months of isolation on top of that, and 1 month of that I wasn't training because I was too concerned. Like, I was very much afraid to, like, leave the house. Because when you have a congenital, like, condition, it's fucking weird, man. Like, it's a weird space. It's a weird time. And then it's like, I don't have the outlet. I'm alone with my thoughts. I can't see people, like, at all. And, like, even though I tend to be kind of I'm like a mixture. I'm probably a little bit more extroverted than you, but I'm still on that like spectrum of back and forth. Like I like being alone a good bit, but
Oh
like
yeah.
being isolated and being alone are two completely different things.
Yeah.
And so like, dude, that first month of COVID was horrible, absolutely horrible.
For us, it was hard because me still being in the clinic, seeing patients, and then having two kids at home, and then potentially risking exposure to them. That was the hardest part for us, or like me and Jen and everything. But like the feeling of isolation, I mean, for me, one of my biggest fears and sources of not feeling super awesome about myself is like feeling alone. Like, you feel isolated, to a certain degree because you can't talk about things or like you don't know who to run to. But when you actually are isolated, like physically isolated because of this pandemic, like it just compounds the issue. And there's something to be said about like human interaction, like actual like their like interaction versus what we're doing, and just it's hard. People are supposed to be social creatures, to certain degrees, but when you're not able to see or touch or be around other people, it's mentally and emotionally draining. So I think that's probably why I've been posting more on social media, just to try to connect with people. And it's kind of like there's still a lot missing there. Like outside of work, that's it. Like I only go to and from work. I didn't go to the beach this weekend. I'm not around other people just because of the current, state of affairs. But like I get it when people like, I want my haircut or I want this just to be around other people. And it's hard. And there's no definitive end either. So it's kind of like, and it definitely wears on people. Wears on me. I'm sure it wears on you quite a bit. So
Dude, I'm so sick of my fucking apartment. Like, I wish I could. The only times I get out are when, because the other thing that makes it worse is the DMV took my fucking license away.
seriously?
Because I have a pacemaker ICD, it's considered a medical device that could be potentially dangerous to other drivers. And so part
Hmm.
of Virginia's medical driver fitness program is that you have to go get like a review process done with your physician to make sure
Hmm.
that you are deemed able to drive. So 2 weeks
Yeah.
into the lockdown, I wasn't going anywhere anyway, but they sent me this like letter that said, "Hey, you need to get this filled out, otherwise we're going to suspend your license." And I was like, I called the DMV. I was like, "Can I get an extension? Like you've closed all of your physical locations. You've granted extensions for like just about everything else that can't be done online. Can can you help me out here? Like I've got a heart
Hmm.
condition. It's the middle of a pandemic. My doctors have told me that I can't go anywhere." And they're
Yeah.
like, "Sorry, dude, it's a medical thing. We can't change the deadlines." And I'm like, "But we're in a pandemic, right? Do you see the
Yeah.
irony of like you're telling me I need to drive 2 hours away to go see my cardiologist, but like
Hmm.
they're not having appointments like they would before, and I can't. I'm not supposed to leave because they don't want me to leave. Like, what do you want me to do?"
Yeah.
A guy was like, "Well, I can email somebody." Are you kidding me?
Guarantee you they didn't email anyone.
So my license has been suspended since April 9th. Um,
Ah, geez.
and so like Ben will pick me up and we'll go to Dave's garage, which is in literally like the middle of nowhere, just the
Yeah.
woods.
I- I've seen it on his post. It looks like the middle of nowhere.
It is. It's not quite West Virginia, but it is both wild and wonderful.
Oh
Um,
man.
and I mean, like that's my only social interaction, which is great because I'm able to still train. Because the first
Hmm.
month of COVID, like I wasn't, and like I had no way to manage my depression. Like I was able to get some stuff from the gym, but like I need that social component of it because I lack motivation like by myself. Like I need to have training partners to push me and like be around me. I can't. I don't know how the hell you train at home alone. Like I need people to be with. Otherwise, like I can't do it.
The only time I actually need someone there, I think, is if I'm doing suited deadlifts. Someone just to do the straps. So I've been through so many training partners, and it's either been like schedules or whatever the case may be. I just like when I go to a gym, the only person I can count on being there is me. And if you guys want to train, that's fine. If you don't, that's cool too. So that's just why it happened that way. Do I do a little bit more when there are other people in the background? Yeah, probably. But like now, I don't know. I just kind of like training by myself. Do my own thing. I don't know. If you ever want to come by the house, train out of the garage, hell, house of cats and lats, man.
I have a cat now. My lats aren't
I
quite
have
visible,
three.
but they're there.
Yeah, talk about feeling like really introverted, dude. I got three cats, man. Come on.
How many do you have? Like is there an end goal in sight for a number that you would own?
Oh God, no. Well, at our highest amount, we had four. We had four cats, and then we lost our first cat a little over 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So four was too many cats for us. Three is just about right. I think two would be like the sweet spot, but like four cats is too many.
I just adopted one like 2 weeks ago, so we're still in the roommates phase. Like, we have opposite schedules. We're just trying to figure things out. He doesn't really contribute much to rent, which is frustrating. He just eats my food, which is
Yeah, you gotta make a separate account on Instagram for your cat, and then just like get paid per views or whatever.
just be
Start doing like
sponsored,
kitty litter.
be sponsored by like Temptations or something like that.
Hey man, dude, my cats eat that shit up, man. You get the Sam's Club like giant container, dude. They go crazy. Well, like, oh god. So a couple people responded on my post or whatever about our little talk here. One person said or asked if you use the training or like CrossFit, strongman, powerlifting, whatever, if you use that or the gym as therapy, is it good or is it bad and why? It's like a loaded question.
It's very loaded.
Yeah.
I feel like it can go either way because
Yeah.
certainly there's that, like, it lets you kind of empty the bucket, like get some stress
Yeah.
out, manage things. But then on the other end of it, you can get really inside your head sometimes and get
Hmm.
frustrated. And I know for me, like right now, I mean, I have had like a chronic shoulder thing for forever, and I deal with that. But like I'm at a point where like my technical mastery of the lifts is not great, and that my
Hmm.
progression for so long has just been like just brute strength and like figuring out ways to pick up the weight. And
Hmm.
I like really need to improve on the technical aspect of the lifts because I'm at a point where I can't get much stronger doing things suboptimally, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So trying to clean
Yeah.
up like my squat form, deadlift form, bench technique, it's all like very frustrating and it's hard to manage. And like
So it adds stress instead of takes it away.
because it's my outlet, but then at the same time, like I get in my head or I like over listen to cues or like take things like personally sometimes because I have a tendency. I think a lot of us have a tendency to do that.
Yeah.
And when you look at it as something that is very much part of your identity, like you said before, like I am a physical therapist, I am a lifter. I define myself by the things and activities that I engage in. And so like when I'm trying to do something like clean up my technique and you see numbers drop, it's like, oh, I'm not benching as much as I know that I used to be able to, or, I'm doing
Hmm.
sumo. So like I'm not lifting over 600 pounds on deadlift, which, I was like, I'm nowhere close to your deadlift. Like your pull's insane, but, but like, relatively speaking, like my sumo numbers are like nothing compared to what I used to do conventionally. And like that's frustrating. And so you have to like I have to continually try to like take myself out of that situation and like add some objectivity to it because the more that I get in my own head, like even though it's lifting and it's my escape or my therapy, like there's some days where it's worse than if I just stayed at home.
Yeah. For me, I think if you get too into it, like maybe if, like, for example, right now I'm an undersized heavyweight. Like I'm 5'10". Don't, my lifts are probably average at best in comparison to a lot of other like over 300-pound like heavyweights and stuff.
Mm.
If I got in my head, I'm going to be a heavyweight pro strongman and I'm going to be a world's strongest man at age 36 right now, that would be very counterproductive. So if for me, if my goals were very unrealistic and I just focused on those unrealistic goals, I think training and competing would be counterproductive rather than helping me out in terms of stress and everything. So I think if you take the gym and if you take training for what it is, and that's to better yourself in one way, shape, or form, then it's great. But if you go I'm gonna win the main stage at the Arnold in Columbus next year, and I haven't even qualified for it yet. Like stuff like that. Like if your goals are completely all over the place, that's when I think it gets kind of really counterproductive. Like you are who you are and you can improve on it, but if you start comparing yourself to other people or have very wild aspirations, it may be counterproductive.
Have you ever read the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
No, but it's been told that I should read it several times. I just haven't gotten around to ordering it yet.
Do you have Audible?
No, but I can, is that through Amazon?
Yeah.
I mean, I got Amazon Prime. I could probably just do something with that.
I'm pretty sure I can send you like a free copy of it if you
Okay.
Good. But there's a, like what you said is basically very, very similar to a lot of the stuff that they talk about in that book. And a lot of it is like, and this is actually something I've used for like a coping mechanism, for managing like stress and anxiety and stuff, is like setting realistic goals, because we kind of live in a society where everyone is bred to be special and unique and be like a special snowflake, and like everybody gets like participation awards and all that stuff, and we can debate if whether it's like the boomers' fault or not for giving them to us, but like even when you're a little kid, like you're told you can be anything you want to be. Like you can be you can be the president, you can be a professional athlete, you can be a movie star. And I think that for a lot of people, we get this idea that like those things are the expectation or the norm. Like that's what we should aspire to. And so then when we fall on like mediocrity, we feel like we're complete failures. When the reality is that if you just set like mediocrity and like being good at something or like having like a solid life, if that was your goal, just to have, general stability or whatever else, or to even just be like a good physical therapist or a good strongman versus like being the best, that makes it much more manageable, because then you can even break down how you quantify being good at something or having stability, but it's when we start overreaching, and there's nothing wrong with like having dreams and aspirations, but when that becomes like the crux of your entire life and like that's what you have to do or else you're gonna fail, maybe we should like reevaluate how we do this, how we set those goals, and what are.
Yeah, I mean, you want to aim high. You want to aim high. You definitely want to aim high. But I mean, like, especially if we're talking about right here, right now, I'm not in no way, shape, or form going to be a starting center in the NBA at 5'10". Like something like that. So at some point, your aspirations and reality should get a little bit closer together. Maybe they should never meet. But I mean, like for me, there's still professional aspirations that I want to do, with physical therapy. Still want to get my OCS. I might, out of sheer necessity, have to get my CHT, which I'm not looking forward to whatsoever. Man, I don't want to make splints, bro. But it might be a need for the company, and I'm the only one willing to do it. But like, at some point, it's like you gotta. I wouldn't even say that settling is like a bad thing, but it's just like once you kind of found your place in life or in work or whatever, just do it to the best of your ability. Like for me, I think the greatest heroes in our world are the people that do the same thing day in and day out and just do it really well. Because without them, our society would collapse. Like the garbage man, if he doesn't do, or garbage person rather, they don't do their job. I mean, that's no trash is getting picked up. Like, or if the person that has to clean the hallways of a school, like if the janitor doesn't do their job, like so, or like the dad that just goes to, like my dad worked a government job. His whole job was to make sure bills were paid. He didn't even pay the bills. He just made sure bills were paid. But it's like someone that just goes in and day out and like, they did a lot to sacrifice for my brother and I to have a better life. Like without them, I wouldn't be in the position that I am in now. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, it might be really shitty and you might not be super awesome where you want to be. But I think if your kids or someone that's looking at you that you don't even realize that are looking at you, see that you're doing your job to the best of your ability consistently, it affects them too. So I think that's where like the real hero comes out in that regard. But you have to be realistic with goal setting. We tell our patients that, like, if your jelly donut, right, just explodes like in your work, you might not be lifting a whole lot of weight right now, even though you really want to, because jelly donut. But yeah, it's just you're setting yourself up for a failure. I think it's more so what you take out of it and what your expectations are versus anything else.
No, is that something that you feel like manage? Because I know now you're talking about like having more realistic goals and stuff, but was that something that changed over time, or?
Well, okay, so I'll put it to you this way. Like, for example, the social media and everything. Mm-hmm. Like, I've done some Q&As and whatever, but am I ever going to be like a PT account that, here are a couple that I follow. Like, am I ever going to be strength coach therapy, right? Teddy Wilsley. Am I ever going to be like a Wesley Wang? Mm-hmm. Am I ever going to be like Sam Spinelli, right? Where they're consistently putting out PT stuff and building exposure that way. No, I am not. Mainly because I personally, and through self-reflection, I can't handle that much exposure. I can't handle that many people asking me questions. I got my patients here. I got my family. There's only so much attention that can be happening. So would I like to be an authority of some sort in physical therapy? Yeah, I would. And something that is going to be a consistent working towards. I want to be respected in the community professionally. But if I wanted to be like the physical therapist on Instagram, like churning out content every other day, realistically, that's just not something that I can do because I just don't have the time, nor do I have, frankly, the creativity to do any of that. Like, I know how to treat stuff, and I can tell it to you here. I can do the hand gestures, do Peyton Manning, audible, whatever. But it's like, I don't think that that's something that I could ever do. I wanted to do it. Don't get me wrong. 3 years ago, I wanted to be like that guy. But then I realized I don't want to be that guy. If that kind of answers the question in a slightly different way.
You don't want to be the prehab guys?
Man, I don't even know if they lift, bro.
I'm pretty sure that video had like 115 on the bar. I think those were 35s. They might have been 25s actually. They were.
You might as well be doing deficits then, right?
Did you have any other questions on like either from your story or on the post that you made?
The other one was, it's like, so if, like, for example, how can I frame this? Like I haven't kept up with a lot of people from high school. I don't keep up with a lot of people from, like college and stuff. But like a question was from an old college pal who happened chance saw this. It's like, let's say you got a guy that just kind of texts you, or your only correspondence with this person is through like text or DM or whatever, and they ask you, "Hey man, how's it going?" And you want to say something about how you're really doing. What is the best way that you feel like you could be like, "Well, let me tell you something."
Dude, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and I mean, we've touched on like a lot of this stuff, right? You talk about
Yeah.
you're supposed to be like outwardly strong, you're not supposed to show emotion. And for a lot of like males that struggle with depression and anxiety, like you don't really know who you can trust or like who you should invest that
Yeah.
time in. Because like, dude, I've done that with people where I've tried to be open and then they're just like, whoa, this is too much, or like I can't deal with this. And it's like, but you asked and
Yeah.
you
Then it feels
said
like
you wanted to
rejection,
know.
right?
Yeah. And so like it takes, I think for me, I've, even though like I tend to be very open like in stories and stuff, and like if people ask me questions about it like directly, I'll do that. You know, like I'll be very direct and honest about it. But at the same time, like if it's something, if it's like a friendship or a person that I would like to like, you know, create a meaningful relationship with, a lot of times like, dude, I don't fucking tell them much at all. Like it has to be something
Mhm.
that I think there's a give
Build
and take
towards.
and trust building that goes into creating like a safe space to be able to express that stuff. Um,
Mhm.
because a lot of times, like even if it's just a quick text or DM, like, oh, how are you doing? I mean, like I could write you a 10-page essay on how I feel, you know,
Yeah.
or like try to describe to you like what it feels like to struggle with like depression, anxiety, or like suicidal ideology. But
Mhm.
like what is it going to accomplish? Like is my, and that's one thing that's come down to me is like, is the amount of time that's going to take for me to express myself or the time that I'm going to invest in this conversation ultimately going to be worth it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where it's hard. Like it depends a lot on who the person is, what our previous relationship is, or if it's someone I feel like is being authentic and is genuinely interested. Like if someone
Mhm.
truly wants to know and they come across that way, yeah, I'll talk about it. Because again, I tend to be very direct and open about this. I may not always communicate when I need something, and I've
Mhm.
definitely gotten better at like texting some of my friends who are aware of my situation, just be like, hey, I need to talk about this, or like, do you have time for me to like vent about something? um, but that's a hard one, man. What are your thoughts on it?
So that, for me, yeah, as you've touched base before, it's easier for me to put something out there and for complete strangers to respond to it rather than me having a previous relationship with someone, like friend or whatever, and just be like, hey, like it's I've been kind of like screwed over in the past a couple times by just people in general. So it's just like the closer you are, like the person that just responds to an Instagram story is not, lack of a better term, not as close to me as someone that I've met in person and maybe have like shared however long of my life, like a semester in college with or whatever. And so, like, with a name and a face and previous memories, like, am I going to get screwed over? Or are they just not going to care? Or if I share this information with this person, are they going to reject me? And then that'll make me feel even worse. That'll make me feel stupid, number one. And then it's tough. So I think, yeah, if I had to put it in a different way, the return on investment has to be in my favor, or the risk to benefit ratio has to be in my favor. If someone that I haven't talked to in like a year, it's like, hey, Greg, how's it going? But if it's like, if you ask me, yeah, but if you're like, if you, 6 months from now, like, hey, Greg, how's it going? And be like, fuck, let me tell you, Jake, like, I would do that. So I think when you build that rapport, a certain amount of rapport, over time, there's a certain threshold for me that I can open up to someone that I know, and that's built through shared experiences, similar experiences, things of that nature, where you, to a degree, understand where I'm coming from instead of just going,
Yeah.
and then you're like, I don't know how to handle this. So it, it it's kind of picking and choosing your battles for me. So if it was like someone from my past that I've gone to before and they ask me like, Greg, how's it going? What's up? Then I'll open up. But if it's, yeah, like someone from high school that it's like, hey, Greg, are you interested in my It Works program? Then no, I'm not gonna.
Do you want some chocolate greens powder?
Yes,
It'll
that's
help you
right,
with your
man.
bloating, and you're gonna lose 10 pounds in 5 days.
That's right. So I think that probably explains my end of how I would go about doing it. Did you get any questions on your end of like your stuff
Mine were
other
mostly,
than how other than how Phage's yogurt is better than Chobani?
yeah, no, mine were mostly yogurt related content. I mean, I got a lot of comments from people like my training partner Ben, and I think he commented on the your post you made on Instagram, where like him and
Hmm.
I mean, like we talk about this stuff with each other quite a bit because
Yeah.
it's a common thing, you know, and like we both work together in the gym and struggle physically, and we kind of express stuff that we're dealing with like psychologically as well.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, most of my stuff was just like comments on like, you know, glad to see people talking about this because I really do think, you know, I mean, there's the powerlifting motivation video where George Lehman talks about like how like you have to be like fueled by hatred to be a power lifter and everything else. And I mean, I don't know that it's quite like that. Um, I think there are people in the strength sports that certainly do struggle with depression and anxiety.
Hmm.
But it's a spectrum, man. Like everybody is so how it manifests and how it like how you have to deal with it and what you experience are so individualistic. You know, like there's
Hmm.
certainly common themes of like um, isolation, you know, suffering, you know, different things that we all experience, I'm sure, from time to time. And we certainly struggle with connecting with other people. You know, we deal with the stigma of like, if I tell somebody that I am depressed, is that going to change how they feel about me? You know,
Hmm.
and I think like from a societal standpoint, like it's getting more acceptable. But then I feel like there's
Yeah.
also that aspect of like disability porn too, where it's like, oh, well, look how, you know, successful this person is that struggles with depression and anxiety. You know, I get it sometimes with like the, oh, you're lifting and you have a pacemaker. And it's like, I mean, yeah, but who cares? You know,
Yeah.
I'm not doing it because I want attention because of this thing. I'm doing it because I want to show people that, you know, you can be vocal about it and you can express stuff and, you know, you can struggle with like disabilities and still like make something of yourself,
Yeah.
you know?
So yeah. I mean, okay, so probably the last thing I would say is like the last thing that I would want someone to do in regards to me and mental health and depression and all that. The last thing I would want someone to do is to feel sorry for me. That's the absolute worst thing that you could do. Like the worst thing that they could say is, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Like, no, it's just how I feel. I
Classic
mean, it's
answer.
like, yeah, it's like, thanks. Like, I would rather someone tell me a solution that may have worked for them than to say, man, I'm sorry about that. Like, thanks. Awesome. Like, give me something to, like, I don't want to feel this way. Just help me do something and not feel this way instead of saying, man, I'm sorry about that. Like, that is the worst thing. People feeling sorry for me in mental health. Ugh. I don't know.
Yeah. So what is like as far as like creating, I mean, obviously like I think we're getting better as a society of like being more open and talking about this and like normalizing mental health and kind of breaking the stigma. You know, it's
Hmm.
scary to think that fucking like shit 80 years ago we were like lobotomizing people because they
Hmm.
were depressed or like using shock therapy. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, fuck. but we're getting better. Like, it's something that definitely is more talked about. But like,
Mhm.
as far as creating a safe space for people to be able to talk about these things, like, what if like what do you recommend to people? Like, is it just a matter of like, no judgment and just talk and just let them know that you're there for them? Um,
I would say that's a tough one. I mean, the next worst thing someone could do, yeah, is judge me for how I feel. But I would say you want to create an environment that is accepting of how you feel. Like, this is how you feel, like, and that's okay because they're your emotions. But I you want to make sure that people are safe with how they feel about their emotions, but also you want to try and potentially give them tools to kind of like manage it. Sometimes it's just people want someone to listen. And if that's it, that's great. Like, sometimes, like, I just want to vent and then I can just go do whatever for however long and I'm fine. I just needed to vent. But it's just like the hard part about that is you want to avoid an environment where it's just a lot of people bitching and moaning about like nagging issues. Like, I hate to put it this way, like, but like the Karens where they're just complaining about something for the sake of complaining. So it's like this weird thin line where it's like, yeah, you want to, you know, create an environment where guys can talk with other guys or whatever, and just be like, yeah, man, I know how you feel, and it sucks, and this is what I did to make it better or to manage it, versus like, it really grinds my gears when people don't put things in cellophane bags. Like, okay.
no, but
So
I definitely feel
that's
that
the
though,
balance.
because I feel guilty. I don't know how you feel, but like, dude, if somebody tells me that they're always there to help me out or like they can do something, I like never would never take somebody up on that.
No,
I would feel
no.
so fucking guilty about
And
that.
I'm guilty of being that guy that says that too. Like, that's the tough part too.
But it's just it's hard. Like, and it's hard to ask for help and it's hard to accept help, but it's also hard to navigate that space of like, is this person really there for me, or are they just saying that to be comforting?
Hmm. That's above my pay grade. That one I don't have a good answer to, man. I think that's why I have three cats.
Instagram's giving me the 2 minute warning here.
Sweet.
We're like fourth and 8 on the goal line. So,
All right. What
um,
anything else you want to get in real quick?
I mean, I think the big thing for me is like, it's okay to talk about this stuff, right? Like, I know it's hard to be in strength sports, to be a dude, to have this like idea, like that you said before, where if you're like, if you're big and strong, you should be big and strong on the inside too. And that's not always the case, right?
No,
But at the same
no.
time, it also takes a lot of strength to be able to talk about this stuff and ask for help and accept help.
Yeah, yeah. If you need the help, ask for the help. That's what I'll tell. Ask for the help before you do something completely irrational, like I did. Ask for the help and then accept the help, because I'm terrible at accepting help when it comes to that. Um, you have to branch out in order. You have to probably do something different in order to avoid a very bad outcome, and you have to be okay with doing something different in order to manage emotions or feelings. Um, everybody's a little different. Everyone handles things a little bit different. But also don't feel insulted if someone doesn't know how to help you. Like, I've reached out to the wrong people and they're like, Greg, I don't know what to tell you, man. And then I felt kind of hurt, but like, they just don't know what to do, and I can respect that in hindsight. But yeah, don't feel bad if they don't know how to do anything for you either.
All right, we got 10 seconds left. Greg, thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. You're an awesome dude. And Meatball says hi.
Meow.